IMI External Quality Assurance Centre Support and Guidance Update. We'll just wait a wee minute, I think, just until we see if any more people want to join us, and then we'll get underway. Joining us now, so I just wanted to make you aware, highlight that the presentation will be recorded just before we start recording. Would it be possible to start recording, please, Steve?
Sure.
Okay. If I could ask that you keep your questions to the end and your cameras switched off, please, for the stability of the room, and your microphones muted, just so that everyone can hear the presentation. We'll get underway now. I'm Grant Kidger, the External Quality Assurer for the North and International, covering a majority of the Scotland Centre network. I also have Steve Longworth, External Quality Assurer for the North and International, and I'm sure many of you have met him during IMI network meetings or during a centre engagement. Would you please introduce yourself, Steve?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to say a thank you for all your efforts in maintaining candidate development and interaction during a very tough start to this year. This also follows a very unusual and demanding 2020. Now we've completed introductions, I wanted to run through the agenda. We have centre feedback in relation to the adjustments to the strategy that happened last year, and a similar process called ERF in the other devolved nations. What adjustments to the strategy this year may look like: introducing lapse period for core skills and for regulated qualifications, an introduction to the Ofqual, the English regulators CAS, best practice, and just before we end, we will do a question and answer session. As mentioned in the agenda, just wanted to take a moment to run through the centre feedback in relation to the adjustments to the strategy last year. We had a great many centres reply to the survey with some really positive comments. We have a small selection of these in this slide here. Within this survey, we also asked a lot of questions relating to areas that how we did well and areas that we could improve on. That was within obviously adjustments to the strategy in Scotland and the English, Irish and Welsh ERF process. The top left, how would you rate and support the IMI through the adjustments to the strategy or ERF process? We can see we did very well with a lot of the feedback within this. And the top right, again, how would you rate the support from the IMI throughout the adjustments to the strategy or ERF process? Again, we had some really positive feedback that obviously feeds into what, if anything, if the adjustments to the strategy reopen up, what will make it better this year. And in the bottom, During the ref and adjustments to the strategy period, how appropriate were the options for the agreed adaptations for learners and employers? Again, I must thank you for the time taken to complete all this survey. It's the only way we can improve our services to you, the centre network. And please remember that while we want to be flexible and assist, we also require to remain compliant with the regulators, being SQA accreditation in Scotland. Let's have a look at the possibility of adjustments to the strategy being opened for this year's learners. The regulator's intention is that assessments, where possible, take place as close to normal practice as conceivable within the candidate cohort. If awarding organisations are authorised, there will be a continuation of the adjustments to the strategy that was used last year. This will look to help the knowledge adjustments only at this stage in the year, ensuring assessments remain robust and maintain public confidence in regulated qualifications. The focus of the adjustments allowed at this point is around flexibility and the utilisation of technology. Flexibility to increase manageability and deliverability of assessments and qualifications. The use of technology is paramount. These include remote observation, map criteria from SVQ to VRQ, remote invigilation, holistic practical task evidence, and I'll go into a wee bit more depth later on in the presentation for some of these flexibilities. What does this mean for existing and new learners? Current assessment strategies still apply, meaning that delay or catch up of practical and online tests once the college or training provider allows candidates to return to the learning environment is sometimes the only option. Please remember, adjustments to the strategy is currently not permitted to qualifications or assessments at this point. Only flexibility and the utilisation of technology is permitted. Also remember, MOT qualifications will not have any flexibilities applied. The Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA, have confirmed no flexibilities will be applied to any assessments or delivery methods. Flexible assessment approaches for vocational and technical qualifications. Regulators have issued guidance on vocational and technical qualifications, or VTQs, adaptations or adjustments to the strategy. The continued message is where it's possible for learners to continue their learning online or utilising technology. At this stage, they should do so. This includes remote teaching, where it is not possible because learners need access to specialist facilities and equipment in order to develop practical skills, and health and safety. The Health and Safety Executive's guidance, in conjunction with all other Scottish Government guidance in relation to the current alert level that is in place in Scotland, should be adhered to. I'm sure some of these things are actually already happening, and you're very fluent in them, with the delivery of classroom and theory elements obviously been utilised through Zoom or Teams, and I think we've all become quite fluent in these methods in the last year. What I want to cover with lapsing periods of qualifications, this has caused many candidates to have certifications delayed this year. It's not something any of us wish a candidate to endure. Core skill registrations. I think many of you have kind of noticed that core skills registrations are due for closure in July. Meta skills are the proposed new framework being introduced. IMI have been working in the background to get clarity for the centre network. I think most centre staff will be happy to hear that core skills will stay a bit longer. Core skill frameworks will be extended for 2 years. The 2-year extension period will now mean last registrations will be the 31st of July 2023. And I think that just takes the pressure off slightly, especially when we've got new qualifications for light vehicle coming out in the summer with, I think, all of the other adaptations we've had to become familiar with this year. I think that's just taking the pressure off the centres that we can continue with what we already know. Lapsing periods for qualifications, moderation and verification. Current arrangements reference to SVQ levels are an SVQ 1 and 2 is 2 years, and SVQ 3, 4 and 5 is 4 years. Traditional claiming of the SCQF level 5 for VRQs, along with the SCQF level 6 and 7 will require to stop. IMI understands a qualification can run over on occasion, but going forward, we'll be expecting evidence of ongoing interventions to show the timelines for candidates that needed support to achieve in timely certifications. Centres will notice a slight change in engagement focus. Moderation will now play a vital role in the sampling completed by your EQA. IMI awarding homepage has a handy list under information pit stop called Current IMI Scottish Qualifications that was last updated in November 2020. But each qualification last certification date can be viewed in each qualification within the IMI awarding website. Now, I think it's one of the things that has historically been done where we've been claiming level 5 VRQs along with the other 3, the other areas of the certification being the SCQF 6 or 7 VRQ and the SVQ for apprenticeships. I think that is what's caused some of the issues. What we'll be expecting centres to do going forward is claim the VRQ 5 when it's actually achieved. And I think that will stop any of the lapse periods being overrun and then having to delay the candidate's certification until we've claimed the certification and gone through the process of applying for it and waiting for a regulator to come back and authorise the opening of that qualification. So it's something we'll need to look at moving forward, and it's something we'll be supporting with during our engagements, and as always, we're here to help. EQAs will focus more on moderation between candidates within registration batches. This may include qualifications due for their lapsing period running out. Moderation or in-progress sampling will take account of assessment decisions across candidates, assessors, and other sub-centres. In practice, this will mean that your EQA could now choose candidates with the same registration date within the same qualification, and if one candidate is found to be tracking behind the other candidates, your EQA would be looking for evidence of assessor and/or IQA interventions and support. And again, I think many centres are already looking at this and supporting the candidates that are falling behind. We all know that you've got a busy schedule and we've got lots of things to do, but I think supporting these candidates that are slightly tracking behind is also going to benefit the lapse periods and the certification before the closure of the qualification. EQAs have seen a lot of centres completing effective moderation, but EQAs have equally seen centres only completing summative IQA. Moderation is imperative and ensuring centres conduct more in-progress sampling, which also takes into account assessment decisions across candidates, assessor and other subsections. In 2020, adjustments to the strategy highlighted issues that if the centre were completing robust moderation, many candidates would have been certificated earlier in the term. Schemes of work not been followed, candidates tracking well behind their peers, rules of combination, including stretch and challenge units, these being optional units, been completed prior to mandatory units being closed off. And again, I think it was one of the things that we could look a wee bit closer at and have a slightly tighter grip on going forward. And let's be honest, if an issue is highlighted within a summative IQA, it's often too late for an IQA to support or guide the assessor and make corrections to the portfolio. It's a case of playing catch up at that point. That again is just going to delay the certification process of that candidate. Lapsing periods for qualifications, moderation and verifications aligns with Ofqual's Centre Assessment Standard Scrutiny, or CAS. The number of candidates falling into the lapsing period of qualifications, or our findings within the adjustments to the strategy in Scotland, or the ERF process in England, Wales and Ireland has resonated within the findings of an Ofqual consultation. Many of the findings are standard practice within an existing IMI engagement visit, but as mentioned within the previous slides, more focus on in-progress moderation will be a theme within future engagements from all awarding bodies after this consultation. Now, this is something that's going to be introduced in England, and as I said, with the kind of adjustments to the strategy and what we saw happening with some centres, I think it's going to be good practice to introduce it across all the devolved nations going forward. Best practice. I know best practice under normal conditions. We'll be recapping what a lot of you are doing pre-COVID-19. I hope some of you do remember the good old days when we actually had normal conditions and we saw candidates face to face. But we felt it was good practice and relevant to recap on some of these. Schemes of work for qualifications should be followed that will help focus learning and help IQA moderation. We've seen a lot of schemes of work possibly been lost and not followed correctly. And when we've looked at some IQA records, we've found that IQAs are going in and sampling units that are empty and making comment on that. Now, that's obviously not ideal and wasting the IQA's time and not supporting the assessors. What we look for is the schemes of work to be followed so that the IQA process could be aligned with the practice of completing the modules on an ongoing basis. This will obviously help support the assessors and ultimately help the candidates progress within their qualification. Please take a modular approach to qualification delivery and assessment, and sign off knowledge or skills units once completed. Signing off the unit as early as possible is still relevant today as it was. This will also help your IQA complete in-progress sampling. In-progress IQA and sampling will help support an assessor that's possibly gone off track and reducing the centre's risk. And that's something that we're obviously looking at on an ongoing basis during our engagements. We're obviously looking at the risk level of assessors and how the IQA is there supporting them. We've got an awful lot of assessors that are maybe not experienced or finding difficulty under these COVID conditions. And I think there should be a little bit more focus on from the IQA onto how the assessor is actually conducting their work. This can either be for the knowledge, the skill, or the competence requirements. Each of these areas can be obviously drop away at this point when there is various difficulties in completing what we would normally do. And I think having the support behind them of an IQA is obviously going to make it better for ultimately the candidate. Learners are obviously not coming into centres at this point, or fully coming into the centres at this point, but we're all hopeful that we're getting closer to the return of more face-to-face learning. The completion of written assignments is best practice and have been used to great effect during the last year's adjustments to the strategy. A lot of the centres used the written tests to proxy across the online tests because they found invigilation obviously very difficult during lockdown and not having candidates in centre. I think going forward, it's something that we're going to be looking at for this year. And as I said, it was used for great. There was an awful lot of candidates were helped through the process and allowed timely certification with this proxy being allowed. The use of e-learning technology has been invaluable under the current restrictions, with many centres adopting IMI's e-portfolio that's also helping remote in-progress IQA sampling and moderation, and helping centres remain vigilant to candidates or assessor support requirements or the risk of malpractice. Centres to consolidate practical tasks, assessments that will help focus a little bit further, we'll further focus on in the, further on in the PowerPoint. Unfortunately, there's been issues with candidate engagement through remote learning or with placements no longer employing apprentices. That will mean there will be withdrawals from funding. But with the withdrawals from funding, there should also be the withdrawal from IMI's web portal too. That we've seen a lot of centres maybe not completing as thoroughly as they should. What I would suggest is that when candidates are removed from their funding, that we'll obviously, you should be removing them from the IMI's web portal too as well. That's going to give you some clean data to work with so you know who's on course and who's not on course. Centres that are using ePortfolio have found it simple to present learner progression and evidence alike. Paper-based centres or centres that use paper-based portfolios have had to put in work into presenting the same evidence that's time-consuming and doubling up your work. Assessor formative and summative feedback reporting can be made on IMI's ePortfolio. Learners have the ability to add evidence, narration, and see how they're progressing. This is obviously a really good way of supporting the candidate. The assessor can then speak to the candidate and help them with their work. And you can see that the candidate's work can go backwards and forwards within ePortfolio, showing that the student is building up their knowledge within that unit before complete sign-off of that section. Photos, again, can be used to great effect within the IMI's ePortfolio. We all know that candidates don't like writing up big long screeds of written exams or the workshop practical tasks, and we find that photos really kind of paint a picture of what the candidate is trying to get across, and it's obviously going to help in their narration. There's obviously other systems out there that we also embrace. please contact me if you wish to adopt the portfolio. We can help. We also have Malcolm, that's obviously your BDM for in Scotland, can also help with this. We have help documents. We've got documents to help the assessor, help the candidate, help the centre champion, and we've got kind of wee practice elements that allow you to practice with the portfolio before you fully take it on. Centres that are or have been using ePortfolio found it simple to present learner progression and evidence alike. We have 4 bars here, and you can see these here. These are really good at tracking. The top one is the overall progression of the candidate's portfolio. Then below that, the green bar represents the VRQ. The yellow bar represents the SVQ. And then the core skills can be embedded within the bottom bar that is black and 0 progression at this point on this candidate's portfolio. Now, these kind of things, I know that can sometimes be a big step, picking up an ePortfolio and running with a new system, but I've had many assessors come to me and saying, we don't know what we did previous to using the ePortfolio. It's been great, obviously, during lockdown and really helped candidate progression, that they've been able to upload evidence, pictures of their work, complete written tasks, all online, with the assessor obviously being able to mark it. If you don't feel confident at picking it up straight away, it can be ran alongside your paper portfolios for a year until you get more fluent in the way to use it, and then adopt it fully going forward from there. I think it also allows help with your IQA. The IQA can obviously go in and look over the ePortfolio at any point. And again, during lockdown, it's obviously ease of access of viewing candidates' evidence within an ePortfolio. There's not portfolios have got to be shuffled about and moved about. And obviously, with portfolios leaving the centre, they're out with your control. And it reduces GDPR issues if everything is kept within the portfolio and under password protection. The units choices are yours. You can add in there stretch and challenge units. These can be incorporated. Another bonus is that the candidate assessment summary is generated automatically by the ePortfolio. Online assessments, again, are transferred into the ePortfolio once a candidate has passed that section, and increases the percentage increase, so that the candidate is always seeing whether it's a written test, an online test, a practical element, or witness testimonies or observations. It's all adding to the percentage increase, and the candidate knows exactly where they are at any point within the course. It also helps the assessor that they can see candidates that are maybe starting to flag behind a wee bit and maybe needing a wee bit of support and guidance to bring them back up to speed. Remote teaching. Remote teaching is probably something we're all familiar with now, and I know that it's very difficult to obviously still do this, and you have an awful lot of the screen switched off as we have just now, and you're maybe not getting as much feedback as you would get within the classroom, and making it a lot more difficult to obviously question candidates and see, guide and judge the knowledge that they've actually understood during the presentation. So it's probably second nature to you all, and you're utilising many products from the list that we've got there. I've also seen many assessors and trainers including this in their new skills within their CPD requirements. So please add anything that you've learned through remote teaching as part of your CPD. It's something that we're obviously keen that you keep up to date. It's your CPD, and obviously we've had to learn an awful lot of new skills this year, so please include that. Vicanto is a new product that the IMI and partners Lucas Nuller will be launching this year. The IMI have a relatively support pack, the parent support pack that we've got a link later on, and it's for homeschooling. I know that a lot of the children are now back at school, but we have a link there that you can gain access to later on that will possibly help with some information for you. Imi Written Assessments. Our qualifications are supported by written assessment documents for a centre to use and help remote delivery. This was the main assessment method used to ensure the assessor has confidence and that they're satisfied that the full range of knowledge criteria has been met, allowing the assessor to make an informed decision about the learner's knowledge. As mentioned previously, if regulators allow the adjustments to the strategy within 2021, written exam completion will be a key to proxying online tests. What we've got here is we've taken a screenshot of IMI awarding, and you can see the arrow, the blue arrow, allows, you can see the access to the written exams there. These are all downloadable. They can be done on paper, and they can also be done within your e-portfolio. If a candidate has difficulty gaining access to an e-portfolio, these can be sent through an email, and the candidate can complete them by writing on them or typing in them, and then that can be uploaded into the candidate's e-portfolio at a later date. And again, it's showing progression, showing that they're obviously building up their knowledge after the presentations that you've been delivering. What we have is remote invigilation. All applications must be made by the centre coordinator via an IMI's inquiry form within IMI's centre hub. This is so a record can be made and is auditable. Please ensure that you apply before conducting any one-to-one remote invigilation. And I think that is one of the difficulties of this, that it is on a one-to-one basis with a candidate. We also recommend scheduling practice sessions prior to applying. There is a process, and again, please get in touch with me if you want to conduct this remote invigilation on a one-to-one basis. We've got a checklist there and a procedure of how we wish you to do it. For further details as well, you can go into the IMI's operating manual. Section 5.1 will give you some information, further information about the remote invigilation and the procedures we're expecting. Proctoring is something that we've been reviewing for a while now. It's currently not an option, but we're hoping to have some form of proctoring system in place, hopefully this year. Proctoring allows 2 cameras to be trained on the candidate when they're completing an online exam, so that the assessor, or the invigilator I should say, can view the candidate completing the exam. So that would be that their laptop camera and then a mobile phone camera would link into the system, so you can see a side-on view and get a view of the room that the candidate's sitting in. And it gives 2 perspectives when the candidate is completing a test. Obviously, it's not going to be recording the screen and the questions of the exam, but it's just a side-on view to make sure they're not getting any assistance or don't have answers up in the wall behind them. So it's definitely something we're looking at, and we hope we can give you news on that later on this year. Practical tasks. VRQ practical task sheets are available and required for each unit in the specified qualifications being undertaken. All learners must ensure their write-ups are detailed, showing the relevant skill levels. All sections of the form require narration prior to completion. IMIE portfolio helps learners achieve comments within each box by not allowing submission of the form until fully completed. If images are taken, please include narration on the images and an audible trail of where these are stored. Cross-referencing can be completed and reference made to the source document. We have an example of a service here on this slide. This is also relevant to other tasks. For example, the SEQF5 remove and replace for chassis. If vehicle steering, suspension and brakes were completed, then 2 of the 3 sheets could be referenced to the primary task written up. Remember to have assessors complete feedback that supports growth and reflect on learning. If practice sessions have been made before a final attempt, then keep these as well. They might be needed for if the adjustments to the strategy are introduced and it shows that there's been prior experience with the practical tasks. Remote assessment. All applications must be made by this, again, the centre coordinator through an IMI Centres Hub inquiry form. This is so that an auditable record can be referenced. Please ensure you apply before conducting any remote observation of assessment. The remote observation has been utilised by a lot of centres now, and it's been done to great effect. And it's just another tool in the assessor's toolbox that I foresee many centres take forward after lockdown for the occasional outline candidate. It's something that I think all assessors have kind of said that they've turned up at a candidate's branch or depot or workshop, and the candidate says, oh, I went and did the task that the assessor was looking for the day before, or I'm going to be getting that task in tomorrow. I think remote observation is great for catching these observations. It's really good to kind of drop in. Candidates are great with their phones nowadays, and they can set it up so that they can view a majority of the task. And again, having wee kind of break points so that candidate comes back and gives you a wee bit of guidance on what task has been completed and what he's going to be doing going forward. It just really helps build up the picture that the candidate's doing for the assessor to write up their narrative. Again, it helps the assessor because they can do screenshots of the candidate actually completing the task. And again, if there's extra faults found, this might help with the candidate's portfolio and lead into another unit being another observation being achieved within another unit. Improve learner tracking. Tracking will support what's been done, what is still needed, and what will also help map across units where the holistic approach has been utilised. It also helps with, are the rules of combination been met? Are you doing too many units? Are these the best units for the candidate? And I think it just gives you an overview of where the candidate is and what's needing to be achieved. CAS is available within the IMI awarding website to ensure the focus for each centre is the mandatory and optional units. Only then should centres be working with advanced students and introducing stretch and challenge units, only once the main qualification units have been achieved. I think, again, when we first went into lockdown, there was a lot of centres introducing stretch and challenge units prior to the mandatory or the main optional unit that was required for the qualification. And then we're left, obviously, trying to catch mandatory units when stretch and challenge units had been actually completed and signed off. Data cleansing. Web Portal 2 is IMI's registration and certification platform, and where withdrawals are also made. If learners are no longer in the programme, then it is the centre's responsibility to withdraw the learner. Administrators have the rights to withdraw candidates. Clean data will help on two main items. It will allow the centre to better manage live candidates, and an EQA will not request withdrawn candidates within a centre engagement sample. If you have a candidate that's been withdrawn, please remember there is no cost to reinstating that candidate if they decide, or if they get another job moving forward. It's a case of emailing the CAS team, the Candidate Assessment Services team, and they will be able to reinstate that candidate back onto your centre at no cost to yourself. I think that was one of the areas that I've had quite a few questions about. Is there a cost to the IMI if a candidate leaves, then comes back on? There is no cost. Withdrawals can be a unit or a full qualification, anywhere from 1 to 1,000 candidates at a time via a simple Excel spreadsheet that is downloadable, completed, then uploaded. It's as simple as that to withdraw all of the candidates. Withdrawn candidates no longer in the programme. Give a clear picture of actual numbers of live candidates that you have. The registration reports can be run at any time, as many as you wish, and help with auditing names, qualifications, etc. And I think it's a really good way of obviously just making sure that you know what candidates are on or logged against your centre at any one point and live that the IMI see. So it just helps, I think, to have this clean data. Here are some useful links that we kind of spoke about. So I spoke about the parents pack and some of the other links that will help with keeping you up to date with COVID updates. We've got the landing page for COVID updates, or any kind of previous webinar are all listed within all these links. This presentation will be posted within the IMI's COVID site, past webinars. It will take up to a week, I think, before it's kind of posted. But if you wish to kind of view any of the points or get any questions on it, please get in touch with myself at any point. And we've got some questions. So if you could please raise your hand to any questions that you may have, and Steve can pass them over to me. Thank you.
Okay, Grant, our first question comes from Fraser Mitchell. Go ahead, Fraser.
Just get my microphone unmuted here. Yeah, it's me sorted now. Just a couple of questions, if I may. The first one's related to the duration of time we've got to get candidates through qualifications. I heard Grant mentioning earlier on that obviously the duration's 2 years for level 5 and 4 years for level 6 or 7. Has the opinion been put to the regulators that these qualifications are within a framework package? It's obviously going to cause a wee bit of difficulty to claim the level 5 out with the package. We usually claim the package at the end of the duration of the qualification or the framework. So has that question been put to the regulators that, you know, the duration of the qualification could be the same for level 5 as it is for level 6 and 7?
Yeah, I mean, thanks very much for your question, Fraser. What we have is obviously this is across all qualifications. It's just not automotive, and the regulator feels that the time span is something that has been set across all qualifications, and they feel it is an adequate time frame to complete these candidates. Now, I understand fully that it was historically claimed within at the end of 3 years, I suppose, or round about the kind of 3-year period when the candidate had completed the SVQ, SCQF6 or 7, and along with the VRQ at the same level. Now, it's something we've kind of looked at. The regulator is possibly looking at awarding organisations setting these going forward. But at this point, the regulator sets the time frame dependent on the level. So we can't extend it any further than what's set by the regulator at this point. But we have looked at it and we have spoken to the regulator, and it is possibly something that might change going forward.
It's good to, yeah. It is good to know that, Grant. But bearing in mind that the framework is a package that we are robustly have to stick to and adhere to in order to get the candidate through the framework. We don't make the frameworks up; that's external to us. But as long as it's being looked at for the future, then that's good to hear.
Yeah.
A second question.
Yep.
What if I may? It's relating to your enhanced internal moderation that's going to be completed. Now, what percentage of the cohort of learners that we have are you expecting to have completed internal moderation on an interim basis? So let's say I had 100 candidates on an annual basis, how many would you expect to be internally verified in terms of an interim review done on the candidate?
I mean, if you look at sorry, getting a wee bit of feedback here. The operating manual has actually got specifications for the VRQ. So a low risk, if you take a low risk assessor, I think it depends on the risk rating that you're setting your assessors. So there's not a hard and fast rule, but VRQ is kind of looking for 20%. So there isn't a set formula for SVQs, but for VRQs, it starts off at 20%, depending on the risk level of the assessor. So you need to look at your assessors. If you've got trust and well-established long-term assessor, you're looking for obviously around about the kind of 20%.
It'd be good if there was something hard and fast, because obviously there are people in our organisation monitor what we do to ensure that we're doing things the right way. So if you're sticking to what you're telling us, then grand. If you're doing, but if we're below that, then obviously there's an issue. But I hear what you're saying. That's great.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for your questions, Fraser. Is there any other questions, Steve?
Not that I can see at the moment, Grant. We've still got 10 minutes if anyone would like to ask a question.
There must be some burning questions out there that you'd like to put to me.
Okay, well, Fraser's got his hand up again. I don't know
Okay.
if that was a mistake. Oh, it's okay, he's taking it down there.
Okay. I think things like, I think you should definitely be kind of looking at remote observations and taking these kind of flexibilities forward. They're really going to help. I've seen a lot of centres actually utilising them and definitely kind of making a really good, it's really enhancing the student's portfolio. There's different ways of kind of doing it. They can either be a full video or they can do screenshots and added to the portfolio. And obviously throughout lockdown, we've not been able to get face-to-face in a lot of centres, a lot of garages. So I think using these kind of things is great. And please speak to me if you want any kind of further information about it.
Okay, Grant, we do have another question from Martin McKenzie. Go ahead.
Okay.
Martin.
Hi, Martin.
I have unmuted you, Martin, if you can hear me. I don't know if you've got yourself muted. Okay, we've got a technical problem there. We'll come back to Martin Grant. We have a question from Daniel Donahoe. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hi, Grant.
Hi there.
See the doing your IV on the e-portfolio. Is that a live document?
To be honest with you, doing the IV on ePortfolio is probably a long way of actually doing IQA. It's, if you use the IMI spreadsheet, I think it's an easier and more straightforward system that will speed up the process for you. I've seen a lot of centres adopt it, put it onto Teams so that many IQAs can be, you know, accessing it at one time, and is really, you know, they've taken to it. It really works well. I think the ePortfolio is maybe not great at using the IQA. I mean, I can give you further information out with this meeting on ePortfolio, but I suppose the best, to get the best from IMI's ePortfolio is to use it as a tool for the candidate to upload evidence, for the assessor to mark that evidence and give kind of feedback on it, be informative and summative, and then for the IQA to go in and just view it and then complete the IMI's Excel spreadsheet. I think most centres that I deal with utilise the Excel spreadsheet and it works pretty well. So I would always kind of ask somebody to look at that first before they kind of looked at the ePortfolio's IQA.
Oh, no problem. Just when you were speaking about doing the intermittent or live candidates for IVing.
Yep.
If you're on the ePortfolio, you're doing it live. I just thought that was the way you wanted the IQA done through the portfolio. That's fine.
No,
Thank you.
No. I think it's an easier process if you use the IMI's Excel spreadsheet, and I think most centres utilise that spreadsheet and find it really straightforward. And I've got centres, as I said, put it onto Teams now, where it can be accessed by many people, and I think it's an easier. What we've found is that the IMI's ePortfolio, it's a longer and probably, you know, more difficult to navigate system. And there is like a kind of couple of glitches on it that if you miss a review date of doing an IQA, you need to regenerate that form again. So it's maybe not ideal for you. Okay.
Oh, no problem. It was just a thought when you were speaking that obviously we're just new to the ePortfolio, so we haven't looked at that side of it. I was just wanting you're just giving us a wee bit more clarification. Thank you.
Perfect. No problem at all. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Daniel. Okay, we're just going to try Martin McKenzie again, Grant.
Okay.
Go ahead, Martin.
Can you hear me now?
Can indeed, Martin. How are you?
Okay. Hi, Grant. How's things? Just a couple of questions. First, I think it was Fraser that was mentioning there about obviously the dates for a kind of completion of kind of VRQ2s and VRQ3s, how, you know, and they never seem to coincide at the same point. And I think maybe what everybody is concerned with that is obviously we're always kind of promoted to have a holistic approach to assessing, and that can be very difficult to achieve if you've got one qualification finishing 2 years before the other in a package that you've bought. But that's kind of besides the point, I suspect. But what I was really want to ask though is the bulk withdrawal on web portal. When you go through that process, does that automatically remove the candidates from ePortfolio?
Yes, it does. So it pulls through. Yep. So it's probably a simpler process for you, and will help clean up the data. Yeah, definitely. So
and
get back to you. On you go, sorry.
Sorry, another thing on ePortfolio, just while you're talking about that then. Obviously, I know now that all ePortfolios are deleted once they've been on the system for 4 years. So you either kind of back them up or they're gone. When they're gone, are they completely gone?
No. Nope. What they're just moved off of that server onto a second server where it compresses them down because they're not yet obviously getting used. But what you can do is the candidate can log in once they complete the course. And I would always kind of signpost candidates to do this at the end of any kind of course. If you look at a candidate login page, there's a click here button to download the full portfolio with all the links to the evidence. So when a candidate has completed the course, please signpost them to download their portfolio and then store it locally, and they'll always have access to it then.
That was something we used to do in the past, I know, and I think it's Centre Champion or Assessor, you can download their e-portfolio as a PDF.
Yep, exactly.
Then obviously my computer starts getting backed up with hundreds of portfolios that no one's interested in.
I know.
That's okay.
No, but I would kind of signpost the candidates to it. It's obviously their portfolio, and as you said, it's like a PDF document with links embedded in it, where it's taking them to the evidence and everything. So it's obviously right that they actually have access to their own portfolio and should possibly be signposted to that at the end of the course. Okay.
That's fine then, thank you.
No,
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Final question, Grant. We'll end where we started. Fraser would like to just pop back in and ask another question.
No problem.
Go ahead, Fraser.
Hi, can you hear me, Grant?
Can indeed, Fraser.
Okay, it's a couple of quick questions here. One is that we're aware the written assessments obviously have been a valuable tool for proxies in this climate.
Yep.
Are they mandatory? It just appeared the way it was put across there that these are mandatory. Obviously, the online exams confirm competence of the knowledge that's been completed. So are the written assessments mandatory for level 7s?
No. The mandatory is if you look at the assessment strategies, they're not mandatory. But it's always good practice to have that completed with the candidates. I think it helps them build up their knowledge, and it's obviously the candidates are working away themselves. They are open book, so the candidates can go away and research this, and it can be used as part of a kind of flipped classroom where they're obviously going away and doing their own research. So I think they're a great tool, and I would always recommend doing them. I think you get a deeper understanding from the candidate when they've completed them and they're doing their own research. The level 2s are probably a wee bit more guided in their questioning, but the level 3s are kind of a wee bit more open for the candidate to go and do some research and then build up a picture of the questions. Yeah.
I understand the benefits. It's just as long as they're not absolutely mandatory, we do have methods that we do use. And the second's just another question related to VRQs, the practical tasks. We've got a couple of candidates that are mature learners that are doing packages, are doing MAs. Task sheets that you're talking about for the VRQ practical tasks. If we have SVQ gathered evidence, it's obviously robust, strong evidence from a live vehicle in a workplace that's been ratified and signed off. Do we still have to complete practical task sheets if we're referring them back from the SVQ to the VRQ?
What you would need to do is check that the observations met the criteria within the practical task sheets, but they can be referenced. I mean, the IMI's practical task sheets are supporting documents, so they're not mandatory in the tasks themselves. But the task, we're expecting to see some form of practical task within the VRQ, but the actual task that's named within the practical task sheets are not mandatory. If you feel there's better evidence, more robust evidence that meets the criteria coming from the SVQ, these can be mapped into the VRQ. That's
good. That answers my question, Grant. That's grand. Thanks very much.
Thank you. No problem.
Thanks, Fraser.
Thank you.
Okay, final question, Grant. I'm sure that that lovely person will identify themselves when I let them in the room. It's IN13GM. Go ahead.
Hello, it's Gary from Inverness here. Can you hear me?
I can indeed, Gary. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Aye.
Good.
It's leading on from that question about the written assessments. What we've done is we always use them, but we've raised the pack back to 70% as a cent to try and cover just up the game, if you like, a little bit, in the event that possibly they'll act as a proxy for the online assessments. And I know you don't have a definitive answer, but we're coming what 2/3, 3/4 of the year been through. What is the likelihood of us having to go back and do online assessments for the groups now? Thank you.
I think we're waiting on the regulators coming with some kind of form of information. I don't think it's going to be too long. I was actually hoping for some kind of information to be obviously be given out during this webinar. But I think we maybe need to just wait a wee bit longer for the regulators to come out with some kind of form of information. What I would be suggesting just now is that in the short term is look at the withdrawals and have clean data, because what we're going to do is if it is allowed, we're going to change it and try and make it a wee bit more streamlined than what we had last year. As I kind of started off the presentation, we looked at the feedback in areas of weakness for ourselves and how we can improve. And it's something that we're looking to improve by streamlining it, as in we give you the list of live candidates you've got on the system, and then whether you want them to be, proxies applied and what to within these qualifications. So I would suggest at this point that we're hopeful that in a couple of weeks we have some kind of information from the regulator, and at that point that's where we're going to be asking for centres to make sure they've got clean data before we run reports and then send it to you. So I would suggest that you look at kind of withdrawals at this point, and hopefully in 2 weeks' time, give or take, we'll have some kind of information to feed out to you about the adaptions that are allowed. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah, thanks, Grant.
No problem. Okay.
Okay, Grant, that's all the questions. Thank you, everyone. Very useful for us. If you'd like to just do the closing, thanks, Grant.
Yep. No, thanks very much for your time and all the questions. And I'll catch up with you all later on. Thank you.